Well, it's the end of the week, and I didn't manage to finish Ruined King because reasons, and you'll hear about that later, I suppose. So I need to make a video this week, so I'm gonna talk about the Game Awards, which are a little bit weird. The Game Awards just ended roughly an hour ago, so I'm going off of whatever the hell I thought of, and I made a script for it too, which took that hour. So here are my fresh thoughts on the Game Awards. So is it an award show? And honestly, for all the promotion that goes into the awards, the show is more like an end-of-year E3. A large group of awards are just glazed over every year, and for me personally, the best RPG is always where games I care about wind up, and that category is just glazed over every year, and it's a little disheartening. That being said, while I used to sit around and care about the awards a bit, now I'm kind of just there for the small bits of the show, and to hang around and watch with friends. It feels like the awards matter less and less as I get more and more tired of watching the same games get nominated for everything and then sweep the awards. The last year's awards and I believe 2018's were pretty big examples of that happening. Not to say that those games aren't good, but it's not fun to watch when one thing just kind of reigns supreme over everything else. For example, the lack of variety really does a number on me when watching these for 5 years. Both Persona 5 Strikers and Neo: The World Ends With You weren't nominated at all outside of the Player's Choice category, which Neo was in. And I kind of also don't care about the Player's Choice category, because I usually don't agree with it. But regardless, Strikers is also in a weird place because it technically came out in 2020, but also technically came out in 2021. But not going to get into that because Persona 5 was the same way, and they had no problem nominating that game for multiple awards in the 2017 Game Awards. Anyways, my whole point is essentially that the Game Awards doesn't really focus on the awards, and I feel like that's likely because of how viewership works and what most people are there for. Essentially, most people are there for world premieres. They show a lot of stuff at every TGA, and thankfully, the variety returned this year after the onslaught of zombie shooters last year and the rise of space games at E3 this year. The show tends to slog at some points, but it varies from person to person, as your interests will vary between game to game, because they try not to focus too much on X, Y, or Z. I think overall I was entertained by the world premieres, and I always sit down to watch with friends because it makes the experience more palatable, and I recommend that you do as well. Or maybe with your favorite streamer. Whichever one it may be, an experience that makes it palatable for you is probably better. In terms of things you might be seeing on the channel, I guess Persona 4 Arena Ultimax and Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, and maybe a few other games down the line. I tend to decide things as I go along. Don't really make a huge list for the time being. Anyways, back to the important stuff. The trailers and new games are the highlight of every TGA. Unfortunately, that does result in a lack of focus on the awards themselves by both people and by the show. But it does serve to feed us a variety of content that winds up being entertaining. I love to see all the new games and stuff and everything coming out. It's pretty fun. And I know a lot of people will say that this show stretches for too long, and I could agree with you, but you are taking what is essentially an award show and slapping new and upcoming announcement stuff in it, so the length is going to be increased either way due to trailers or the show being more focused on awards. This year's premieres also featured some movie trailers and show trailers, and that was kind of new, I think. But if the movies relate to games, I think it's fine. I don't think there's a problem with showing new trailers for movies, as long as they relate to games. So the Sonic movie, cool. For my own little opinions, I guess, I'm more than happy to see a variety in nominations, and I'd like to see more variety as time continues. Last year did have its standouts, and this year did have its standouts. A lot of bigger categories wind up having the same nominations across them, and the same games in those nominations are also nominated for Game of the Year. So you tend to get this common thing where games will kind of not sweep the awards, but they'll win the award because of course they're going to. They're nominated for Game of the Year. So it already probably is the best in the category. Nothing wrong with that, of course, but it would be nice to see some spread and some variety in the winners as well as the nominations. With such a large focus on AAA titles, it's kind of hard to judge indies on the same level, or that's the feeling I get from the TGAs. There are separate categories for each, but I think a lot of indie games wind up getting overlooked because it's hard to stack them up against these AAA giants. Even Hades, that got nominated for multiple awards last year, it's hard to, I feel like they have a hard time stacking it, or they have a hard time judging the game because it is a experience that is different from a AAA game. You don't get that same experience all the time. Anyways, putting that aside, I'm glad there was a decent amount of variety in the TGAs this year, and an overall step up from last year's and a few years before, where the same game would take every single award over and over. It's not to say that one game can't outclass the rest in an award show, but it is to say that it does get a little boring to watch. Believe me, I am not here for, even if, let's say, Shin Megami Tensei 5 was nominated for 12 different categories, I would not want to watch the Shin Megami Tensei 5 awards. It's just not entertaining, right? Again, it's more of a judgment and less of for the show kind of thing. Though I feel like sometimes the Game of the Year does get a little bit of the for the show, we want to have this one win instead of that one. But my complaints aside, world premieres are what everyone is there for, but I think a little bit of more focus on the awards would help. I don't think it's necessary to do it, but it would help the Game Awards part of the show get across to viewers. Ultimately, I'm pleased with how the show turned out this year. Putting aside my own judgment, there was a lot of variety in the premieres, and it didn't feel like games were sweeping through the awards. I know it really doesn't matter, but the fun of the awards would be nice. But for the fun of the awards, it would be nice for a bit more focus on those titles that seem to get glazed over every year. Perhaps the people who nominate games don't see JRPGs, or maybe indie games, as the same quality as other AAA titles that you see flying off the shelves in stores. And that's okay. Their opinion is not mine, and the awards really don't matter. But I would still love to see the day where more games that I like get nominated at the very least. Does it matter? No. But is it fun to watch when something you like is up there? Yes. Anyways, this has been Tiller, and I'll see you guys next week where hopefully I finally finish the Ruined King game so I can review it. I'm really behind schedule, and I'm really sorry about how long it's taking me to get out reviews, but all of this stuff dropped at the same time. I got front-loaded and overloaded with work, and then I got really stressed, so it's been hard to get out any videos in the past few weeks. So I hope you'll bear with me on that, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching.